The practice of Digital India, Aadhaar, privacy by design. UIDAI has been aware of privacy concerns from the beginning and have incorporated these in the design of Aadhaar. The UIDAI recognized the potential risks in the area of privacy and put in place a mechanism to deal with them. Risk 1. Security and privacy of resident data. Aadhaar by design ensures security and privacy of residents' data collected through enrollment process. Access to authentication services are given only to authorized ecosystem partners of UIDAI. Under no scenario, biometric data of resident is shared. Risk 2. Risk to privacy and security of residents' demographic and biometric data. UIDAI has deployed robust security infrastructure to prevent any unauthorized dissemination of demographic or biometric data of residents stored in Central Identities Data Repository (CIDR). Biometric data is never shared with any entity or individuals. Privacy and security of resident data seems to have been the focus of the UIDAI's approach in designing the entire project. There have been many approaches to data protection and privacy. One of the most accepted approaches, which has become a kind of a world standard, is called privacy by design. Privacy by design is an approach to systems engineering which takes privacy into account throughout the whole engineering process. It is an example of value-sensitive design, that is, to take human values into account in a well-defined manner throughout the whole process. The concept of privacy by design is related to the concept of privacy enhancing technologies or PET. This term was used for the first time in the report Privacy Enhancing Technologies: The Path to Anonymity, published in the year 1995. Since 1995, the concept of PET has been fully accepted and become a kind of a standard. A number of countries have invested in creating better understanding and promotion of PET. Privacy by design advances the view that the future of privacy cannot be assured solely by compliance with regulatory frameworks. Rather, privacy assurance must ideally become an organization's default mode of operation. 7 foundational principles required to achieve the desired goal. The 7 foundational principles of privacy by design are: proactive, not reactive; preventive, not remedial; privacy as the default setting; privacy embedded into design; full functionality, positive sum, not zero sum; end-to-end security, full lifecycle protection; visibility and transparency, keep it open and respect for user privacy, keep it user-centric. Proactive, not reactive; preventive and not remedial. The privacy by design approach is characterized by proactive rather than reactive measures. It is not an afterthought. It requires established methods to recognize poor privacy designs, anticipate poor privacy practices and outcomes, and correct any negative impact well before they occur in proactive, systematic, and innovative ways. Privacy as the default. This principle is particularly informed by the following fair information practices. Number 1. Purpose specification. The purpose for which personal information is collected, used, retained, and disclosed shall be communicated to the individual at or before the time the information is collected. Number 2. Collection limitation. Collection of personal information must be fair, lawful, and limited to that which is necessary for the specified purposes. Number 3. Data minimization. Collection of personal identifiable information should be kept to a strict minimum. Number 4. Use, retention, and disclosure limitation. The use, retention, and disclosure of personal information shall be limited to the relevant purposes identified to the individual for which he or she has given consent, except where otherwise required by law. Personal information shall be retained only as long as necessary to fulfill stated purposes and then securely destroyed. Privacy embedded into design. Privacy must be embedded into technologies, operations, and information architectures in a holistic, integrative, and creative way. A systemic, principled approach to embedding privacy should be adopted, one that relies on accepted standards and frameworks which are amenable to external reviews and audits. Wherever possible, detailed privacy impact and risk assessments should be carried out and published, clearly documenting the privacy risks and measures taken to mitigate them, including consideration of alternatives and selection of metrics. The privacy impacts of the resulting technology, operation, or information architecture and their users should be demonstrably minimized and not easily degraded through use, misconfiguration, or error. Full functionality, positive sum, not zero sum. This seeks to accommodate all legitimate interests and objectives in a positive sum win-win manner, not through a dated zero sum approach where unnecessary trade-offs are made. Privacy by design avoids the pretense of false dichotomies such as privacy versus security, demonstrating that it is possible and far more desirable to have both. End-to-end security, lifecycle protection. Privacy by design having been embedded into the system prior to the first element of information collected extends securely throughout the entire life cycle of data involved. Strong security measures are essential to privacy from start to finish. This ensures that all data are securely retained and then securely destroyed at the end of the process in a timely fashion. Thus, privacy by design ensures cradle to grave secure lifecycle management of information. Visibility and transparency. It assures all stakeholders that whatever the business practice or technology involved, it is in fact operating according to the stated promises and objectives, subject to independent verification. This privacy by design principle tracks well to fair information practices in their entirety, but for auditing purposes, special emphasis may be placed upon the following fair information practices: accountability, openness, and compliance. Respect for user privacy. Privacy by design requires architects and operators to keep the interest of the individual uppermost by offering such measures as strong privacy defaults, appropriate notice, and empowering user-friendly options. Respect for the user privacy is supported by the following fair information practices. Number one, consent. The individual's free and specific consent is required for the collection, use, or disclosure of personal information except where otherwise permitted by law. Consent may be withdrawn at later date. Respect for user privacy. Accuracy. Personal information shall be as accurate, complete, and up to date as is necessary to fulfill the specified purposes. Access. Individuals shall be provided access to their personal information and informed of its uses and disclosures. Compliance. Organizations must establish compliant and redress mechanisms and communicate information about them to the public, including how to access the next level of appeal. Application of privacy by design principles in Aadhaar. The second foundational principle, namely privacy as the default, lays down some basic principles relating to collection and usage of personal information. These relate to privacy of users' personal data. There are following operating principles here: purpose specification, collection limitation, data minimization, use, retention, and disclosure limitation. Minimal data collection. You must justify collection of every data element from the perspective of its need and usage. Ideally, you should begin with zero data. Then you should add necessary data element. In Aadhaar's case, a demographic data standards and verification procedure DDSVP committee constituted by UIDAI recommended that only four aspects of demographic information should be collected, and these are name, date of birth, gender, and communication address. On the issue of biometric data, the UIDAI collects photograph and images of both iris and all 10 fingers. Photograph certainly an essential data for identity establishment. The biometric data, iris and fingerprints are also essential for ensuring uniqueness. It optionally collects mobile number and email ID. This helps in communicating with the resident for any activity. Thus, we find that there is no information which is unnecessary and unrelated to the purpose this identity project. The principles of purpose specification is satisfied. Data use limitation. The UIDAI clarifies in its strategy document that the data collected will only be used for issuance of Aadhaar number and later for providing authentication service. In fact, consent of the resident is taken whether he or she would like to share their demographic data with the bank for opening an account, keeping the resident informed and the right to access their own data. This relates to informing the resident about the data usage. The strategy document does not specify if the resident will be informed about it at the time of enrollment. However, the resident's consent is taken relating to data usage. The Aadhaar Act has the following provisions on keeping the resident informed about data usage and right to access their own data. Section 3 of 2. Resident consent and information for authentication. While authentication process defined in the strategy document as also in law implies that the owner of the data participate in the process of authentication. The Act makes an explicit provision making the entire entity requesting for authentication responsible for informing the resident about the authentication. Hence, the resident is always informed of the purpose, nature of information to be shared during and use of information received during the authentication, and all these responsibilities are cast upon entirely utilizing the authentication facility of UIDAI through law, the violation of which is punishable. Random numbers. The second design principle is to issue random numbers with no intelligence. The strategy document states loading intelligence into identity numbers makes them susceptible to fraud and theft. The UID will be a random number. It was done so with a view to protect privacy and profiling of Aadhaar holders. Further, Aadhaar is a 12-digit number with 12th digit being the check digit. With 11 digits, you can construct about 100 billion numbers. Considering that there are 1.3 billion numbers required for India, the system will be using merely 1.3 of the available numbers. As these are randomly distributed over the entire space, 100 billion possible numbers, it is not possible even to guess a number. It ensures compliance with the principle of data anonymization. Data sharing policies. No data download is permitted. Search is not allowed on any attribute. For example, you cannot search the database by giving some search criteria like a name or a Aadhaar number. There are only a few ways in which one can interact with Aadhaar database. One of these is authentication. It is a process wherein Aadhaar number along with other attributes, demographic, biometric OTP is submitted to UIDI's CIDR for verification. The CIDR responds with a yes or no. No personal identity information is given as part of this response. Only authentication user agencies can submit such request. However, data can be shared based on an explicit authorization from the data owner, that is, concerned Aadhaar holder. This process is called electronic KYC or eKYC. Biometrics are never to be shared except in certain situations like national security or a competent court orders. The law lays down these processes in a detailed manner. Legal provisions relating to data sharing. According to Section 29(2), the identity information other than the core biometric information collected or created under this Act may be shared only in accordance with the provisions of this Act and in such manner as may be specified by regulations. The subsection 3 says no identity information available with a requesting entity shall be number 1 used for any purpose other than that specified to the individual at the time of submitting any identity information for authentication, or number 2 disclosed further except with the prior consent of the individuals to whom the such information relates. The subsection 4 says no Aadhaar number or core biometric information collected or created under this Act in respect of an Aadhaar number holder shall be published, displayed or posted publicly except for the purpose as may be specified by regulations. The Aadhaar Act also has stringent provisions relating to data sharing. Section 3(2)(b) specifies that the resident will be informed at the time of enrollment relating to data sharing. B. The nature of recipients with whom the information is intended to be shared during authentication. Protection of information. Chapter 6 of the Act deals with protection of information. Section 28 casts the responsibility of data protection to the authority. The authority ensures security and confidentiality of identity information and authentication of individual records. Biometric information is given a special treatment in the Act. Section 30 defines it as sensitive personal information within the meaning of IT Act as per Section 43A of IT Act. Sensitive personal data or information means such personal information as may be prescribed by the central government in consultation with such professional bodies or associations as it may deem fit, and there are stringent provisions for the body entrusted with handling sensitive personal data. If such a body is negligent in implementing and maintaining reasonable security practices and procedures and thereby causes wrongful loss or wrongful gain to any person, such body corporate shall be liable to pay damages by way of compensation not exceeding 5 crore rupees to the person so affected. Exceptions to data sharing provisions. Adequate safeguards have been provided in the Act relating to safety, security, and protection of data. However, it does make exception to this general rule in two specific cases listed in Section 33 of Act, quoted below. Act number 33, Provision 1. Any disclosure of information, including identity information or authentication records, made pursuant of an order of a court not inferior to that of a district judge. Number 2. Any disclosure of information, including identity information or authentication records, made in the interest of national security in pursuance of a direction of an officer not below the rank of a joint secretary to the Government of India, specially authorized in this behalf by an order of the central government. Even within these exceptions, safeguards are provided relating to review of cases by a high-powered oversight committee and limiting the duration of this sharing. Federated data model. Besides minimal data, the UIDAI does not keep any data except the logs of authentication done by a person. It only knows the date and time and the agency through which authentication was done and not the purpose. Thus, the transaction details remain with the concerned agency, not the UIDAI. This is the best model of keeping data where each data owner has the responsibility of data confidentiality and security. This principle is articulated in Section 32(3) of the Act, which ensures no aggregation information about an individual. Data protection technologies. Aadhaar enrollment is done by the UIDAI registrars through enrollment agencies which are private. This could pose serious data breach. This has been eliminated by ensuring that enrollment is done through standardized software and it is encrypted at the time of enrollment itself through an encryption key as strong as 2048 bits. Thereafter, the data is kept encrypted all the time during transit and at the CIDR. It is momentarily opened for reading during processing. This has ensured not even a single case of data breach from the UID system. Even if the enrollment machine is stolen, the data cannot be misused as it is encrypted. These practices satisfy end-to-end security and lifecycle protection of the resident data. Publication of Aadhaar number. Though Aadhaar numbers are random, Section 24, Subsection 4 of the Act prohibits its publication except for the purpose specified by regulations. The regulations also reiterate this provision and provide that no entity shall make public any database or record containing the Aadhaar numbers unless they have been redacted or blacked out through appropriate means, both in print and electronic form. The purpose of these restrictions is that while Aadhaar numbers themselves are not confidential, their publication in various public records will make it easy to collect information about persons. Collation of data, as explained before, has become relatively easy in the digital world, even otherwise. The recent controversy regarding certain websites publishing Aadhaar number and bank account details of beneficiaries of various government programs seems to have come in conflict with prohibition of Section 29(4). This publication has been done in compliance with RTI Act, which makes it mandatory to publish the details of beneficiaries of various subsidy programs being executed by every public authority. Hence, prima facie, the provisions of RTI Act and Aadhaar Act seems to be in conflict. While RTI Act mandates transparency, the Aadhaar Act prohibits publication of Aadhaar numbers. The best way to resolve this is to partially mask the Aadhaar number on websites. This will be the best balance between transparency of public records and privacy of individuals. Summing up, the UIDAI, since its inception, has kept the basic principle to protect the privacy of individuals in mind. While the Aadhaar Act cannot replace an omnibus national privacy law needed for our country, it has certainly made that task easier by embracing data privacy principles. The debates on privacy violation by UID have largely been concentrated on generalities. Aadhaar is being put to random test with the expectation of being compliant with anything and everything on privacy and then criticized for falling short. Nothing comes out better fighting the windmills, not even Aadhaar, the world's largest next generation digital identity platform. Reference: this video is largely dependent on the following article, Don't Panic, Your Aadhaar is Safe by R.S. Sharma, for its content.